The world was silent, as though even the wind had frozen in that instant. On the 9 heavenly steps, everyone was wide-eyed, their faces frozen in disbelief as they stared at the scene before them. An indescribable feeling filled their hearts, leaving them momentarily unsure of how to react. This sight was truly beyond comprehension. Xia Yuren's rosy lips parted slightly as she stared blankly at the black hole appearing in the center of Mo Xingtian's forehead. Her small hand instinctively covered her lips in shock. Beside her, Shi Qinghai, Su Buxiu, and the others wore the same expression, their eyes wide with astonishment, showing their profound fear and disbelief. As for Lu Ying, he was also stunned. He then felt a chilling cold spread through him as he looked at the young man with his upper body exposed in the sky. Deep in his eyes, fear surged forth. This boy, who seemed to only possess the strength of the early heaven-reaching stage, was truly making him feel an emotion he rarely experienced: terror. That was Mo Xingtian, one of the top figures of the younger generation in the North Tsang continent. Yet now, he had been defeated by this young man. The shockwaves this scene would cause in the North Tsang continent were unimaginable. In the sky, Mu Chen's purple aura quickly faded, and an extreme sense of weakness spread throughout his body. But he gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. His eyes, however, remained cold and fixed on the frozen figure in the distance. The dark aura at his fingertips quickly dissipated. The attack hidden within the purple flame radiance had been the Black Thunder Poison Finger. This unexpected strike had ultimately ended the perilous battle. Mu Chen's eyes were indifferent as he watched Mo Xingtian's body. His eyes remained wide open, his face still reflecting some shock. Black blood flowed from the hole in Mo Xingtian's forehead, and the dark aura spread rapidly, engulfing his entire body. The Black Thunder Poison had already invaded Mo Xingtian's body. No matter how strong Mo Xingtian's power was, this injury was enough to kill him. Suddenly, cracks appeared on Mo Xingtian's body, and with a loud explosion, his body disintegrated in the sky. As the blood mist rose, a streak of spiritual light swiftly shot out. Mu Chen's dragon shadow appeared beneath his feet, and in a flash, he was in the distant sky. He reached out and formed a light screen with his spiritual power, capturing the escaping spiritual light in his hand. Inside the light was a tangible baby-like figure. It was Mo Xingtian's divine soul, and now, that face was filled with shock. "Is there anyone here who can save you now?" Mu Chen asked coldly, his eyes devoid of emotion as he looked at the divine soul in his hand. "Mu Chen, you've won. What else do you want?" Mo Xingtian's divine soul emitted a shrill voice, fear apparent in its tone. At this point, he could no longer maintain his usual calm demeanor. With his divine soul in Mu Chen's grasp, the latter could truly erase him. "How many disciples of Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy have died at your hands over the years? What do you think I want?" Mu Chen smiled, but his smile lacked any warmth. "You kill me, and the Dragon Demon Palace will never let you go." Mo Xingtian screamed. "Is that so?" Mu Chen chuckled, his spiritual power rising, and he shattered Mo Xingtian's divine soul. He was wary of Mo Xingtian, and if it hadn't been for his trump card, the Undying Fire, Mu Chen would likely have been defeated by Mo Xingtian. Given Mo Xingtian's nature, Mu Chen didn't believe he would have spared him. Now that he had finally caught this guy, Mu Chen was not going to let him escape and potentially bring disaster in the future. "You dare, kid?" However, just as Mu Chen was about to destroy Mo Xingtian's divine soul, a thunderous roar echoed through the heavens and earth. The space around them twisted, and a giant spiritual hand seemed to emerge, reaching out toward Mu Chen. Mu Chen's face instantly changed. "Black Dragon Supreme, do you really think Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy is easy to bully?" As the spiritual hand tore through space and was about to grab Mu Chen, another space nearby twisted, and the enraged voice of Grand Tsang Academy headmaster rang out. Another spiritual hand emerged, and the two clashed fiercely. "Those old dogs from the Dragon Demon Palace, do they really think I'm afraid of you?" Mu Chen's figure swiftly retreated, his face darkening. He then clenched his palm tightly, unleashing a surge of spiritual power that mercilessly struck the divine soul of Xingtian with all its might. A sharp, agonized scream echoed through the air as Xingtian's divine soul shattered, exploding into countless specks of light in Mu Chen's hand. At the same time, the horrific and fearful cry reverberated in the sky. Everyone in the surroundings felt a chilling sensation rush from their souls to the top of their heads. They gazed at the young man in the sky, their eyes filled with dread. None of them had expected Mu Chen to be so decisive, showing no hesitation as he crushed Xingtian's divine soul in one strike, erasing him completely. They stared at the specks of light drifting from Mu Chen's palm, their minds blank. Was Xingtian really just erased like this? The top young figure from the North Tsang continent, just gone like that? Lu Ying, Dong Yuan, and the others all turned pale, fear surging in their eyes. Mu Chen had acted so ruthlessly. Xingtian, he had actually just killed him like that. Could someone from the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy, that ivory tower, truly be capable of such cold-bloodedness? The decisiveness and cruelty he displayed was even more intense than that of those who had spent their lives fighting on the edge of a knife. On the side, Shi Qinghai and Su Buxiu also sucked in a cold breath, unable to speak a word. Clearly, they were both shaken. Xia Yuran stared blankly at the young man, who now showed a cold and ruthless side, completely different from the gentle and handsome figure she had seen before. But this new aura was striking, and for a moment, her pretty face flushed slightly, her eyes sparkling with different emotions. At that moment, Mu Chen, in his overwhelming power, wiping out Xingtian, exuded an aura that was impossible to ignore. The entire world was silent. After shattering Xingtian's divine soul, Mu Chen's hand gestured, and the great Xun'er demon pillar flew into his body, bringing with it a dimmed black demonic spear. The dragon-devouring demonic spear, Xingtian's prized spiritual weapon. Mu Chen gripped the black spear. With Xingtian's demise, the weapon showed no resistance, especially after being suppressed by the great Xun'er demon pillar. Now in Mu Chen's hand, it was completely docile. He stored the dragon-devouring demonic spear away. A supreme spiritual weapon was no ordinary object. Even in the spiritual palace of their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, it couldn't be purchased. Since it was in his hands now, Mu Chen naturally wouldn't give it up. After all, although the great Xun'er demon pillar was powerful, Mu Chen didn't dare fully unleash its power yet. But this dragon-devouring demonic spear was different. With it, his combat ability would clearly see a great improvement. Having collected his spoils, Mu Chen's indifferent gaze turned to Lu Ying, Dong Yuan, and Zhou Xian. The three of them felt a chill in their hearts as they met his gaze, instinctively taking a step back. While they all knew Mu Chen might be at the end of his strength, they didn't even think about taking advantage of the situation. Even Lu Ying's eyes were filled with caution and fear, unwilling to make a move. "Three of you, please wait for the next sacred spirit baptism," Mu Chen said coldly. Lu Ying and the others' expressions changed slightly. They glanced at Xia Yuran and the others, who were eyeing them with hostile intent, before finally gritting their teeth and, though unwilling, refraining from arguing. Mu Chen's display of power after killing Xingtian was far too intimidating. Mu Chen's gaze then turned back to Shi Qinghai and Su Buxiu. The two of them felt uneasy, realizing they hadn't contributed much this time. If Mu Chen wasn't willing to share the baptism power with them, they felt they couldn't push him. They could only accept their misfortune. "Senior Xia, Brother Shi, Brother Su, the baptism power is about to descend. Please prepare yourselves," Mu Chen said with a slight smile, the coldness in his eyes fading away. His face once again looked handsome and gentle. Xia Yuran smiled warmly. She knew Mu Chen well enough to understand that he wouldn't act ungratefully, so she wasn't surprised. Mu Chen's figure darted down, moving like a galloping horse, landing at the highest point of the first layer of the 9 heavenly steps. Xia Yuran and the others followed suit, but their position was slightly lower, just one step beneath Mu Chen. Here, the higher ones stood, the more baptism power they would receive, and the best spot was clearly reserved for Mu Chen, which none of them disputed. Mu Chen sat cross-legged, then lifted his head to gaze at the massive light sphere in the sky. The glow there became increasingly intense, and soon, the sound of a clear bell toll echoed throughout, spreading in all directions. Boom! The light reached its peak, and countless eyes turned upward, their gazes burning with fervor. Golden raindrops began to fall from the sky, covering the land like a downpour. The entire world seemed lighter, as if it had just been cleansed. The sacred spirit baptism had finally arrived. At Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy, the entire institution fell into a deep silence. Not only were the students staring wide-eyed, but even the high-ranking officials watching from above were utterly stunned. Their eyes were all fixed on the enormous spiritual energy screen, where the scene had frozen on Mu Chen's hand as he shattered Imo Xingtian's divine soul with a single strike. The young man with a slender, tall figure stood suspended in mid-air. His striking face, usually so gentle, now seemed chillingly cold, like a blade's edge. In his hand, the shattered divine soul turned into countless points of light. It appeared beautiful, but there was a chilling aura to it. Mu Chen had actually killed Imo Xingtian. Shen Songxing and Li Xintong exchanged a look, both seeing the shock and disbelief in each other's eyes. Imo Xingtian, the ruthless figure ranked first on the Zhongling wanted list, was one of the most powerful among the younger generation in North Zhong continent. Many powerful figures from the punishment hall had tried and failed to capture him. Yet now, this notorious figure who had caused so much trouble for the academy had been completely defeated by Mu Chen. This guy, he's too strong, Shen Songxing muttered, a bitter smile on his face. But there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Imo Xingtian had been a cancer to the academy. Without the elders being able to easily intervene, it had been a near impossible task to catch him. Now that he was in Mu Chen's hands, the academy had been freed of this major threat. Li Xintong nodded in agreement, murmuring, "This kid. Every time he makes a move, he's stronger than before. After this, we'll have to join the North Zhong Gate. Otherwise, in the academy tournament 6 months from now, we don't even know where we'll end up." Shen Songxing nodded seriously. He didn't want to keep getting overshadowed like this. While they were talking, the silence at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was shattered by deafening cheers that rumbled like thunder, shaking the entire academy. Every student was filled with excitement, especially the older students who had been sent out to train on the North Zhong continent. They all sighed in relief. In the past, they had always worried about encountering Imo Xingtian or the Devil Dragon Child. If they did, they might not even be able to escape. But now, whether it was Imo Xingtian or the Devil Dragon Child, one had been severely injured and the other completely wiped out by Mu Chen. The greatest threat had been eliminated, and they could go out for training with much less fear. Mu Gu is mighty. Members of the Luo God Society cheered, their faces full of pride. They had once been considered newcomers, but now, thanks to Mu Chen, they walked with their heads held high in Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy. Even the older students dared not show off in front of them. All of this was the result of Mu Chen's hard-fought battles that had earned him this reputation. Xun'er gazed at the scene frozen on the spiritual energy screen, her eyes filled with admiration. The young man with his shirt off exuded a chilling aura, a stark contrast to the gentle Mu Chen she knew at the academy. This striking difference created a powerful impact, and no doubt many young girls were blushing, sneaking glances at the boy in the image. "Look at you, little girl. You're getting all flustered," Su Xian teased as she reached out and pinched her sister's tender face. "Rest assured, with the headmaster there, nothing will happen to him." Su Xian smiled. Xun'er finally relaxed, but then she sneakily glanced at the young man in the light screen. After a moment, she seemed to think of something, her small lips pouting slightly, her mood sinking. With such an outstanding Luoli by his side, how could she possibly have a chance? While the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was in a jubilant atmosphere, outside Sacred Spirit Mountain, the air was filled with murderous intent. At the moment when Imo Xingtian was killed by Mu Chen, the atmosphere outside Sacred Spirit Mountain also froze. The major powers were all slightly taken aback, shaken by Mu Chen's ruthlessness and decisiveness. "You little bastard. How dare you kill someone from my Dragon Demon Palace? I will tear your body into pieces." The The tense atmosphere didn't last long before a roar filled with fury suddenly reverberated through the heavens and earth. Immediately after, a towering murderous aura shot up into the sky, causing the entire world to darken. As winds howled and clouds surged, the major powers felt a jolt in their hearts and turned their gazes. They saw the Black Dragon Supreme's face ashen, his body brimming with killing intent, like a demon god. In these years, how many of our disciples have died at the hands of your Dragon Demon Palace? Black Dragon, if you dare touch Mu Chen, my Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy will not hesitate to cripple your Dragon Demon Palace again. Just as the Black Dragon Supreme's roar faded, a deep voice echoed. The voice carried an undeniable murderous intent and rage. The major powers felt a twitch in their eyelids, turning to look, and saw the Grand Song Academy headmaster's face darkened. The spiritual energy in the air began to grow violent, matching his emotional fluctuations. Haha, Grand Song, you're truly arrogant. If it weren't for the White Dragon Supreme's defection, stealing our palace's treasure and preventing us from completing the summoning ritual, do you really think your Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy could have beaten my Dragon Demon Palace? The Black Dragon Supreme laughed in anger. If you're not satisfied, my Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy is more than willing to engage again. The Grand Song Academy headmaster's voice thundered, shaking countless powerful individuals. Were the two most formidable forces on the Northern Song continent about to go to war once again? This would undoubtedly send shockwaves throughout the entire Northern Song continent. Golden raindrops fell from the massive light sphere high in the sky, descending in a dazzling cascade. The entire world at this moment became ethereal, and the lingering effects of the previous battle were finally settled. A sense of indescribable peace and serenity spread through everyone's hearts. At this moment, whether on the 9 heavenly steps or on the vast ground below, countless powerful individuals quickly sat down in meditation. Although they couldn't enjoy the perfect baptism power like Mu Chen and the others, they were still able to absorb some of the leaked baptism power. If they could absorb it, it would greatly benefit their cultivation. Mu Chen sat cross-legged at the highest point of the 9 heavenly steps. He looked up at the descending golden raindrops. With a single thought, a powerful pulling force erupted from his body, immediately drawing the large masses of golden raindrops towards him. As soon as the golden raindrops touched Mu Chen's body, they quietly fused into him. At that moment, his body trembled violently, and an exceptionally cool wave spread throughout him. This wave was so mysterious, as if divine water had swept through him. The injuries Mu Chen had sustained from his battle with Emo Xingtian were rapidly healing at an astonishing speed. His once depleted spiritual energy was also swiftly becoming abundant and surging. What a magical power! Mu Chen marveled inwardly. He could feel that as the golden raindrops entered his body, his flesh, bones, and meridians seemed to greedily and wildly devour the raindrops, as if they were starving spirits. This wasn't something Mu Chen was consciously making happen, but rather a natural instinct of his body, as it could sense that these mystical golden raindrops would provide great benefit. However, Mu Chen soon regained consciousness. He immediately activated his spiritual energy, unleashing a powerful suction force to draw down the golden raindrops falling from the sky. He was positioned at the highest point, so no one could compete with him for the baptism power. However, the baptism power here was the most potent, and it was impossible for him to absorb all of it alone. Thus, roughly 7 or 8 out of 10 portions of the baptism power leaked downwards. Mu Chen didn't feel any regret about this. Of the full 10 portions of the baptism power, he would absorb 2 or 3 portions alone. Other powerful cultivators on the 9 heavenly steps might share 3 or 4 portions among them. The remaining 2 or 3 portions would be absorbed by those at the very bottom. But the number of people there was too large, so when divided, each person could only absorb a very small amount. Therefore, for Mu Chen to claim 2 or 3 portions on his own was already enough to make others envious. The continuous stream of baptism power fell from the heavens. As time passed, Mu Chen's body was covered with a faint golden glow, and from a distance, he looked like a golden statue. Mu Chen's mind gradually calmed, and he finally entered a meditative state. Strands of baptism power weaved through Chen's flesh, bones, and meridians, slowly gathering toward his chi-si. There, his divine soul sat quietly. The golden raindrops gathered in the small hands of his divine soul, faintly showing signs of crystallizing, an enigmatic and mysterious process. While Chen immersed himself in the life baptism, outside Sacred Spirit Mountain, a tremendous wave of killing intent was beginning to rise. A war that would shake the entire North Song continent was about to break out. "Ha, Taitsong. Do you really think that my Dragon Demon Palace is afraid of you?" Black Dragon Supreme laughed when he heard the words of Taitsong Academy's headmaster. There was a chilling glint in his eyes. He stepped forward and laughed. "You truly believe that my Dragon Demon Palace has been biding its time for all these years with no intention to act? Even if your Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy dares not start a war, my Dragon Demon Palace will destroy you." Countless powerful cultivators were shaken. Even the leaders of the top forces on the North Song continent showed signs of change in their expressions. In the past, the Dragon Demon Palace had always avoided direct confrontation with the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Why had they suddenly become so aggressive? Did they really intend to start a war? Such a battle would surely put even the Supremes at risk of falling, and the fall of a Supreme would be a fatal blow to both sides. Rarely do you Dragon Demon Palace dare to provoke war again. This time, my Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy will clean you up. Taitsong's voice was ice-cold, and his words were filled with determination. The Dragon Demon Palace and Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had a deep grudge. In the past, the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had forcefully taken the Dragon Demon Palace's position as the ruler of North Song continent, and its prestige had since diminished. Over the years, the Dragon Demon Palace had been hiding, but countless disciples from the academy had fallen victim to their schemes. Taitsong's desire for revenge had long been strong. If war truly broke out, he would rather pay any price to eradicate this malignant tumor from North Song continent once and for all. "Ha." Black Dragon Supreme laughed, a strange smile on his face. He then swung his hand fiercely and roared loudly, his voice echoing through the heavens. "Taitsong, today, this Sacred Spirit Mountain will be your place of demise." Boom. As Black Dragon Supreme's roar reverberated through the sky, the very fabric of space in the sky suddenly twisted. 5 towering light rainbows shot up into the sky, obscuring the sun. The sheer magnitude of spiritual energy seemed to turn into a physical substance, visible even from 1,000 miles away. Countless powerful cultivators were shaken, their expressions changing dramatically. They looked toward the 5 light rainbows, where 5 figures emerged, radiating the oppressive pressure of Supremes. Those are the 5 Supremes of the Dragon Demon Palace. Some leaders were stunned. It seemed that the Dragon Demon Palace had come prepared this time, with all 5 of their supreme powerhouses showing up. Were they planning to hunt down Taitsong? Shua. The numerous strong cultivators quickly retreated, fearing they would be caught in such a terrifying formation. Ling Shi, standing behind the Grand Song Academy headmaster, and Luo Li, both had their expressions shift slightly at this moment. Ling Shi quickly grabbed Luo Li's slender wrist, her delicate body darting away with a swift motion. The intensity of the battle put Luo Li in extreme danger, so Ling Shi had to take her away from the Grand Song Academy headmaster's side. The Grand Song Academy headmaster's face darkened as he gazed coldly at the vast scene. A chilling light flashed in his eyes, and he said, "So, the Dragon Demon Palace was already prepared. But do you truly think you can make me fall here? Haha, then come and try." The Black Dragon Supreme's body trembled, and a massive light rainbow shot into the sky. The overwhelming spiritual energy stirred the forces of heaven and earth, forming 6 immense light rainbows that seemed to create a formation, trapping the Grand Song Academy headmaster within. The Black Dragon Supreme clearly intended to combine the powers of the 6 Supremes of the Dragon Demon Palace to kill the Grand Song Academy headmaster. The Grand Song Academy headmaster's eyes were as cold as ice. His own strength had reached the 5th grade Supreme level, and the Black Dragon Supreme was also at the same level, not weaker than him. The other 5 Supremes of the Dragon Demon Palace were at the 1st grade Supreme level. This lineup was indeed a formidable threat. However, the Black Dragon Supreme was being far too naive. Did they really think there were no strong experts in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, just because they made a move on him here, on the North Song continent? In the distance, Ling Shi had brought Luo Li to a safe spot. She glanced at the vast area filled with immense spiritual energy, her delicate brows furrowing. She said, "Luo Li, stay here for now. I'll go help the Grand Song Academy headmaster." Although Ling Shi wasn't officially part of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, she did hold the title of Elder and had received some care from the Grand Song Academy headmaster over the years. Most importantly, it was here that she had met Mu Chan. Since he was in danger now, she couldn't just stand by. Be careful, Ling Shi Jia. Luo Li nodded, her expression calm despite the terrifying situation. Even though many influential figures on the North Song continent were shaken, she didn't appear alarmed. After all, she was the imperial princess of the Luo God clan and would be the future queen of the Luo God clan. As one of the 4 great divine clans of the Western Heaven realm, the Luo God clan's foundation far surpassed that of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy and the Dragon Demon Palace. Although the clan had declined over the years, it still boasted supreme experts that the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy and Dragon Demon Palace couldn't compare to. Ling Shi nodded and was about to take action. However, as she took a step forward, her expression suddenly turned cold, and her beautiful eyes narrowed as she looked at the empty space ahead. She coldly said, "Who's there? Hiding in the shadows like a rat?" As her voice fell, she extended her slender jade hand and immediately reached out, gripping the air. Vast spiritual energy surged like a light rainbow, covering the sky. It formed a 10,000-foot vortex of spiritual power, smashing toward the empty space, aiming to shred it. "Ha ha, what a fierce girl!" A voice suddenly emerged from the void, and the space became dark and deep. A figure materialized out of thin air, his sleeves waving, and countless shadows seemed to form behind him, blocking the incoming spiritual energy light rainbow. It was a middle-aged man dressed in black. His broad figure exuded a deep and dark aura, his black hair flowing freely, and he gave off an imposing presence. Clearly, he wasn't an ordinary person. "Who are you?" Ling Shi asked, her brows furrowing. "Luan," the middle-aged man smiled lightly. "Luan, the president of the Shadow Chamber of Commerce?" Ling Shi's face darkened slightly. "It seems the Shadow Chamber of Commerce has colluded with the Dragon Demon Palace. You're quite bold, daring to make a move on the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Don't you fear bringing disaster upon yourselves?" "Haha, Ling Shi, you've misunderstood," Luan chuckled. "The Shadow Chamber of Commerce has no intention of opposing the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. It's just that the Dragon Demon Palace offered a reward that caught my interest. All I need to do is block you." Ling Shi's face turned cold. "So you think you can stop me?" she mocked. "Haha, I know you're a spirit array master, Ling Shi, but with my 3rd grade supreme strength, I think it won't be difficult for me to engage with you," Luan said with a smile. Ling Shi sneered. "Are you sure you're not being overly confident? The Lord Bei Ming of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy probably already knows what's happening here." Hearing the name, Lord Bei Ming, Luan's eyes clearly narrowed slightly. The North Abyss Dragon Kuin was an invincible existence on the North Song continent. With this formidable being stationed at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, no force had dared to shake its position over the years. If the Dragon Demon Palace dares to take action, they must have a way to deal with the North Abyss Dragon Kuin, Luan smiled and murmured. Ling Shi's heart trembled slightly as well. The North Abyss Dragon Kuin was a 9th grade supreme, an unmatched force on the North Song continent. How could the Dragon Demon Palace possibly have a method to deal with it? Was that even possible? However, she did not scoff at the idea. The Dragon Demon Palace was not foolish. They understood how massive a threat the North Abyss Dragon Kuin posed to them. If they truly had no countermeasure, they would not dare to challenge Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. "Then, I'll have to see whether you have the ability to stop me." Ling Shi suppressed her shock, her eyes cold as she fixed her gaze on Luan. Her jade-like fingers flickered with light. Then I must apologize to you, Miss Ling Shi." Luan sighed, and behind him, a vast, eerie darkness seemed to stretch out, engulfing the world. In Sacred Spirit City, Master Mou of the Shadow Hall and Elder Zhu Tian did not follow the others to Sacred Spirit Mountain. However, when several towering rays of light shot up into the sky, their expressions instantly changed. As Master Mou's piece fell onto the chessboard, his finger trembled, shattering the jade chessboard into dust. The two exchanged glances, both sensing the shock in the other's eyes. They suddenly sprang to their feet, ready to rush to Sacred Spirit Mountain. "Hee, the two of you. Let me accompany you for a game of chess." As they stood, a faint, smiling voice rang out in the pavilion. Master Mou and Elder Zhu Tian turned sharply, only to see a man in white robes materialize in a nearby seat, smiling at them. Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce President, Dongming. Both Master Mou and Elder Zhu Tian's expressions darkened when they saw him. At Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, countless students were still watching the suspended spiritual energy screen. As they were still immersed in their excitement, a blood-red beam of light suddenly shot up into the sky from the main hall at the heart of the academy. The sound of a bell ringing urgently echoed through the heavens and earth. Dong! Dong! The faces of countless students changed drastically as they stared in horror at the rising blood pillar. Within the red beam, a massive blood-red bell shook violently. "That's the blood soul bell tolling?" Shin Songxing and the others looked horrified. This was the most urgent alarm at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. In all the years they had been here, it was the first time they had seen the blood soul bell react. Chaos erupted throughout Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. All the high-ranking officials rushed out, their faces filled with shock as they gazed at the scene. Swish! Swish! The other two Heavenly Seed Elders, who had stayed at the academy, appeared in the sky. Their faces were grim as they stared at the blood soul bell. They exchanged a glance and said, "Something has happened to the headmaster." As the academy descended into chaos, the urgent bell tolls suddenly stopped. Everyone looked up to see a withered figure appearing beside the massive bell. With a flick of his sleeve, he sent the bell crashing into the main hall. The old man, thin and scruffy, bald-headed with no hint of grandeur, furrowed his brow as he observed the chaotic Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Quiet. His voice was ancient and frail, yet carried immense pressure. With just one command, the entire chaos was instantly suppressed. Lord Beiming. The two Heavenly Seed Elders immediately bowed when they saw the bald old man. Chao Xiao, you two immediately activate the Academy Protection Spirit Array and head to Sacred Spirit Mountain. The rest of you, remain and guard Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. No one is to be allowed in or out, the bald old man said indifferently. He no longer had the lazy demeanor from before. The seemingly disheveled appearance now held a subtle, yet undeniable, air of authority. Yes. The two Heavenly Seed Elders quickly replied. The bald old man raised his gaze toward the direction of Sacred Spirit Mountain and let out a cold grunt. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure moved, shooting up into the sky. As the light surged, the world seemed to grow dark. All the students looked up in shock to see a pair of black, cloud-like wings unfurl from the horizon, covering a 1,000-mile radius. Caw. The endless black giant bird let out a piercing screech. As its cloud-like wings flapped, the space shattered, and its enormous body vanished into thin air. That is? Countless students stared in awe, their eyes filled with intense excitement. That is Lord Beiming, the North Abyss Dragon Kuan. Above the 9 heavens in the North Song continent, a shadow that was nearly invisible to the naked eye streaked across the sky, faster than the wind. As it spread its wings, it seemed to pass through space itself, making it nearly impossible to discern its form. All that could be felt was the passing shadow through space. The next moment, it had already appeared thousands of miles away. Such speed was enough to leave even ordinary Supremes speechless, unable to keep up. This shadow was none other than the North Abyss Dragon Kuan, who had flown out from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Although the North Song continent was vast, with his speed, it would only take him a few minutes to travel from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy to Sacred Spirit Mountain. The massive shadow swept across space with the power of wind and thunder. In the next instant, the space ahead was torn apart, and black seawater poured out, crushing the space and surging toward the unseen black giant bird. Caw. This sudden change startled the North Abyss dragon Xun'er. He quickly unfurled his wings, which were as sharp as divine weapons, tearing through space to collide with the black seawater. Boom! Tidal waves of ripples spread out, and chunks of space shattered. Above the 9 heavens, over 100,000 miles high, a terrifying tornado storm was immediately whipped up. Who dares to show up and make trouble? Get out here! The massive black shadow gleamed, rapidly shrinking, and the North Abyss dragon Xun'er transformed into a humanoid figure. His sharp eyes fixed on the space ahead, and his cold shout echoed across the sky. Heh, Beiming, it's been so many years. Your temper still hasn't changed, came a voice from within the space. Then, the surrounding space quickly collapsed, and the surging black seawater poured out, flooding the world like a black ocean above the clouds. Within the sea, a water pillar rose, and atop it stood a figure. It was an elderly man dressed in blue robes, with black water patterns shimmering faintly on the fabric. He smiled as he looked at the North Abyss dragon Xun'er. Upon seeing the blue-robed elder, the North Abyss dragon Xun'er's gaze tightened, and he spoke in a low voice. Wuliang ancestor? What are you doing here on the North Song continent instead of being in your infinite continent, making trouble? The blue-robed elder before him was known as Wuliang ancestor. It was said that he possessed the strength of a 9th-grade supreme and controlled the vast infinite continent, along with several other smaller continents. In the Great Thousand Worlds, he was considered a major power with a formidable reputation. However, the infinite continent was far from the North Song continent. Why would Wuliang ancestor suddenly appear here? Heh, it's been so many years since I've seen an old friend. I came to catch up, Wuliang ancestor replied, still smiling. The North Abyss dragon Xun'er stared at him, and suddenly, cold light flickered in his eyes. He slowly said, so it was Dragon Demon Palace that called on you. A big shot. No wonder these little brats dared to provoke my Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. So it's you, old man, stirring the pot behind the scenes. Wuliang ancestor chuckled. I've heard for a long time that there is a sacred spirit mountain on the North Song continent. I've taken quite an interest in it. Beiming, you've been here for so many years, yet you haven't taken control of this place? Why don't we cooperate and rule this continent together? We can also team up to explore that sacred spirit mountain, a place where a heavenly supreme once meditated. I don't believe you aren't tempted. The North Abyss dragon Xun'er calmly responded, Old ghost Wuliang, you should go back to your infinite continent. Don't meddle in the affairs of the North Song continent. Hearing the increasingly impolite tone from the North Abyss dragon Xun'er, Wuliang ancestor's smile faded somewhat. Beiming, it seems you're not going to show me even this little courtesy? A mocking smile appeared on the North Abyss dragon Xun'er's face. He fixed his gaze on Wuliang ancestor and said, Old ghost, trying to show off in front of me? You've got the wrong person. Courtesy? When martial ancestor first came to the Great Thousand Worlds, you, old ghost, tried to take advantage of his beautiful women, but you were almost killed by martial ancestor's slap. You ran for your life for a whole year, and didn't even dare to return to your old lair. With that kind of miserable history, you think you can talk about courtesy? If you have the guts, go find martial ancestor in the martial realm. The words of North Abyss dragon Xun'er were as cutting as a blade, instantly freezing the smile on the Wuliang ancestor's face. Terrifying murderous intent erupted into the sky, spreading across the vast expanse of the heavens. North Abyss, you're seeking death. Wuliang ancestor roared, his face flushed red. This matter was a bloody scar in his heart. Back then, in a moment of madness, he became the subject of great ridicule, losing his reputation completely. It had since become a deep shame in his heart. Over the years, he had devoted himself to training, greatly enhancing his strength. He had once thought about taking revenge, but he never expected that while his own strength was growing, the martial ancestor had made astounding progress, rising from obscurity to become a dominant figure in the Great Thousand Worlds. Under his banner, the martial realm, had become filled with experts, and even ancient and powerful races like the Ice Spirit clan had humbled themselves. The clan leader even handed over their leadership to one of the martial ancestors' wives, aligning with the martial ancestor and martial realm. This had been the main reason the once dying Ice Spirit clan had grown stronger in recent years. Facing such a terrifying existence, Wu Liang ancestor had spent the years living in constant fear, afraid that the martial realm would send experts to deal with him. Therefore, he dared not seek revenge or even approach the martial realm easily. The humiliation he carried in his heart would likely never be avenged in this lifetime. Boom! Wu Liang ancestor waved his hand, releasing an overwhelming surge of murderous intent. The dark, boundless ocean immediately surged forward. Every drop of water in this ocean was river Styx water that he had painstakingly cultivated with immense spiritual power, obtained from the Stygian realm. This water had transformed into the Stygian Sea, and wherever the water roared, it could turn any material into nothingness, displaying an overwhelming and domineering force. Humph! Seeing Wu Liang ancestor make his move, North Abyss Dragon Kuan also snorted coldly. His dry palms stretched out, transforming into a massive pair of wings. With a sweep of those wings, countless feather-like sharp rays surged forward, breaking through space and colliding violently with the dark ocean. The black ocean surged furiously, but could not break through the blockade of the feathers. The domineering ocean waves were unable to corrode the equally powerful feather rays. Playing these tricks in front of me? You old fool, have you truly lost your mind? North Abyss Dragon Kuan's expression turned cold as he waved his sleeve. The countless feather rays quickly condensed, transforming into a creature resembling a fish and dragon. It directly charged into the black ocean, cutting through the giant waves with unparalleled power, speeding towards Wu Liang ancestor. North Abyss Dragon Kuan's true form lived in the endless North Abyss Sea. Though Wu Liang ancestor's Stygian Sea was powerful, it had little effect on him. Instead, he used the force of the ocean to launch a stronger counterattack. Boom! Wu Liang ancestor stomped his foot. In the black ocean, a massive tidal wave gathered and transformed into a colossal black trident, several thousand feet long. It shot out and clashed violently with the fish dragon-like creature. Boom! The terrifying shockwave swept through the area, affecting tens of thousands of miles of the sky. The entire world seemed to go mad, with violent storms ravaging the land below, leaving it in utter chaos. Countless powerful figures fled in panic. At Sacred Spirit Mountain, numerous experts suddenly looked up in shock, their gazes fixed on the distant horizon. Clearly, they had sensed the earth-shattering battle that had erupted there. The tremor of this battle had even caused these great figures to be filled with fear. Who is fighting there? What's causing such a terrifying commotion? It must be Lord Bei Ming of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Then who is he fighting? Is there anyone on the North Song continent who can match him? It must be the Dragon Demon Palace's doing. Some of the powerful figures exchanged glances, their eyes showing a mix of shock. No wonder the Dragon Demon Palace dared to act against the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. They had called upon such a formidable helper. Grand Song, too, sensed the wave and his expression slightly changed. Haha, Grand Song, how does it feel? North Abyss Dragon Kuan is now entangled by Wu Liang ancestor. Do you still think anyone can save you? Black Dragon Supreme laughed loudly, his voice full of elation and satisfaction. After being suppressed for so many years, the Dragon Demon Palace was finally on the rise again. The Dragon Demon Palace, you're really willing to pay such a price just to deal with my Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy? He naturally had a clear understanding of the situation. The Dragon Demon Palace not only had the powerful assistance of the Wu Liang ancestor, but had also convinced the Shadow Chamber of Commerce and the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce to help delay the elders of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. They must have paid a heavy price for this. As long as we can erase your Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, the Dragon Demon Palace can afford any price, the Black Dragon Supreme said with a cold smile. Taitsong's eyes were as cold as ice. It seemed that today, he truly had to fight with everything he had. Gentlemen, this is a conflict between my Dragon Demon Palace and the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. I hope no one else interferes, the Black Dragon Supreme said, scanning the surroundings before speaking in a deep voice. The major figure's expressions subtly shifted. Initially, they thought the Dragon Demon Palace was recklessly courting death, especially with the presence of the North Abyss Dragon Kuin in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. But now, it seemed the Dragon Demon Palace had been planning this for a long time. As long as today's plan succeeded and Headmaster Taitsong was surrounded and killed, coupled with the presence of the famous Wu Liang ancestor, the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy would most likely meet a disastrous end. At a time like this, who would dare intervene? They would try to remain neutral, avoiding taking the wrong side and provoking enormous trouble. Form the formation, attack. With a fierce wave of his hand, the Black Dragon Supreme unleashed 6 towering beams of light, spreading like a gigantic dome, directly enveloping the 6 of them and Headmaster Taitsong. The Annihilation Formation was already in place.